Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going straight into a really potent chapter from ancient scripture, Isaiah chapter 22. It gives us this intense look at a city in crisis. And maybe more importantly, how the people reacted. It's
Mhm.
surprising. So the scene opens, the text calls it the Valley of Vision, and you picture this city, right? It says it's full of commotion, tumult, even revelry, people shouting from the roofs. You might think, okay, panic, preparation. But then there's this strange detail, the people who died. They weren't killed by the sword, not in battle, and the leaders, they apparently tried to flee but just got rounded up, easily. Without a bow, the text says. It's chaotic, yeah, but
Right.
maybe not the kind of chaos you'd expect from, say, a direct assault initially.
Exactly. That opening is, well, the disconnect is really striking, isn't it?
Yeah.
The city's loud, maybe even festive in this bizarre way, but the reality beneath it is grim. These non-combat deaths, leaders just captured. It almost feels like some kind of internal collapse. Or
Hmm.
maybe they were just utterly caught off guard. And
Yeah.
calling it the Valley of Vision right at the start, that sets a tone.
Yeah?
Traditionally, that's a place for oracles, for divine messages. So the name itself hints this is about seeing or maybe failing to see what's really happening. And you feel the weight of it immediately with the speaker's own words in the text, like, turn away from me, let me weep bitterly.
Yeah.
Don't try to console me. It's not just reporting. It's raw grief over what he's witnessing.
That grief, it leads right into describing the crisis really hitting. The source called it a day of tumult and trampling and terror, and it's happening right there in that same Valley of Vision. It describes walls being battered down, people crying out to the mountains, that classic image of just sheer terror fleeing for the hills.
Sounds like the invasion is now fully underway.
Yeah.
And the text is specific about who's coming. It names Elam taking up the quiver, Ker uncovering the shield. These aren't just generic enemies. They point to specific peoples, likely east and northeast of Judah, maybe a coalition force. And the picture is vivid. Chariots jamming the valleys, horsemen right at the city gates. The enemy isn't distant. They're there. The text says it bluntly. The defenses of Judah are stripped away. Whatever they add militarily, it's either gone or just completely useless against them.
Okay. So the threat is real, it's immediate, the fences are down. What does the city do? According to the chapter, they swing into action. Hardcore civil defense. It says they looked to the weapons in the Palace of the Forest.
Mhm.
Sounds like they raided the royal armory. They noticed the many breaches in the old city of David walls, started trying to patch things up, focused on water too, storing it in the lower pool.
Practical stuff. Makes sense.
Right. And they went through the city, counting the buildings in Jerusalem, maybe assessing resources, or figuring out what to pull down, because then it says they actually tore down houses to strengthen the wall. Pretty drastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even built a whole new reservoir, like a collecting pool, between the two walls for the water of the old pool.
So they are incredibly busy. You get this picture of frantic activity, right?
Yeah.
Weapons, walls, water, even sacrificing houses. Total mobilization.
Yeah.
But, and this is the crucial bit, right after listing all that effort, the text delivers this sharp critique. It says, essentially, you did all this, but you did not look to the one who made it, or have regard for the one who planned it long ago.
Ah.
That's the heart of the indictment here. All this intense physical, practical work, but they completely missed the spiritual dimension according to the text.
Mhm.
Ignored the source of it all. It's just this stark contrast.
Yeah.
Immense human effort, profound spiritual neglect.
That contrast really sets up what comes next, highlighting just how deep that neglect ran. The source says there was a specific divine call on that day from the Lord Almighty. And the call wasn't for more building or fighting. It was a call to weep and to wail, to tear out your hair and put on sackcloth. You know, those traditional signs of deep mourning, repentance, humility.
Right. That's presented as the appropriate response in this situation. Acknowledge the gravity, maybe their own part in it, seek mercy, don't just rely on, well, tearing down houses. But what did the city actually do? The text paints a very different picture. But see, there is joy and revelry, slaughtering of cattle and killing of sheep, eating of meat and drinking of wine.
The exact opposite.
Completely. They answered a call for deep sorrow with a feast, a party, essentially. And their justification, quoted right there in the text.
Yeah.
Let us eat and drink, you say, for tomorrow we die.
Wow. Defiant or just fatalistic?
Could be either, couldn't it? But either way, it's not just ignoring the call, it's actively doing the reverse. Embracing this reckless, immediate pleasure right when doom is knocking.
And the consequence for that specific response, that attitude, it's stated as incredibly severe in the source. The Lord Almighty apparently declares, till your dying day, this sin will not be atoned for. That's heavy. It's not just a mistake. It's framed as unforgivable within this context.
It seems to suggest that this particular reaction, rejecting humility, choosing self-indulgence when called to look beyond themselves, is seen as the final straw.
The attitude itself is the core problem.
Exactly. It's not just that their defenses failed. It's how they responded inwardly to the crisis and the call. That act of rejection, celebrated with feasting. The text presents it as a profound spiritual failure.
Okay, so that's the city's collective story. Facing doom, partying instead of repenting, earning this harsh judgment. Then the chapter shifts gears, doesn't it? It zooms right in on individual leaders. Starts with a guy named Shebna, identified as the steward, like the palace manager, a top official.
Right. And the criticism against him is immediate and very personal. It's all about his tomb. The text asks him, basically, what are you doing here? Who gave you permission to carve out a grave for yourself up high, chiseling your resting place in the rock?
So not just any grave.
No, this is prime real estate, hewn on the height. It suggests he's preoccupied with his own status, his legacy, building this prominent monument for himself while the city's falling apart. Kind of mirrors the city's issue, right? Misplaced priorities, using his power and resources for personal grandeur, even thinking about his burial instead of addressing the real crisis. Arrogance, maybe?
And the judgment pronounced on him in the source is, well, it's intense, very dramatic. The Lord, it says, is about to take firm hold of you and hurl you away, O you mighty man. The imagery is really vivid. He'll be rolled up tightly like a ball and thrown into a large country. Exile.
A violent one.
Yeah. There you will die, it says, and there your splendid chariots will remain, you disgrace to your master's house. Total humiliation, stripped of everything. And just to be clear, the text states outright, I will depose you from your office and you will be ousted from your position. No ambiguity there.
It's such a powerful contrast, isn't it?
Yeah.
He's carving this permanent marker for himself in rock, and the judgment is, you'll be ripped out, thrown away, die far from here, your status symbols left behind. It really drives home the futility, from the text's perspective, of seeking earthly status when facing divine reckoning.
So Shebna, the arrogant steward, is out. Who comes next? The source brings in Eliakim, son of Hilkiah. He's the replacement. And the handover is described with all this ceremony. Eliakim gets Shebna's robe, his sash, his authority, like a formal transfer of power.
Eliakim is presented very differently, much more positively. The text says he will be a father to those who live in Jerusalem and to the house of Judah.
A father figure. That sounds stable, caring.
Exactly. Responsible. And he's given this incredible symbol of authority. I will place on his shoulder the key to the house of David. That's huge. The house of David means the royal lineage, the kingdom's core. And this key, what he opens, no one can shut, and what he shuts, no one can open. That's language usually reserved for, like, ultimate divine or human authority. He's being given real power and trust.
So a good leader, stable, powerful, stepping in. The text even uses this great metaphor for his reliability. He'll be driven like a peg into a firm place.
Solid. Dependable.
Right, something you can rely on. And it expands on that. All the glory of his family will hang on him, its offspring and offshoots, all its lesser vessels, from the bowls to all the jars.
Wow, that's quite an image.
Isn't it? He's like the central support beam for his entire family structure, holding up their honor, their well-being, everything from the most important members down to the smallest pot. He is stability personified in this description.
Yeah, it really feels like a resolution at this point. The corrupt guy is gone. A good, solid, divinely appointed leader is installed. Given ultimate authority, described as this firm foundation, you kind of expect a happily ever after, or at least stability restored.
Exactly. You think, okay, problem solved, reliable leadership is now in place. But, and this is where the chapter takes this final, really unexpected twist. Right after establishing Eliakim as this super stable, firm peg, the text drops this bombshell. In that day, declares the Lord Almighty, the peg driven into the firm place will give way.
Wait, even him?
Even him. It will be sheared off and will fall, and the load hanging on it will be cut down. Everything relying on him collapses.
Huh. So, after all that buildup about him being the firm peg, the reliable father figure, the key holder, it ends with him failing too, or being removed.
Yeah.
What does that signify? It completely undercuts that sense of security you just felt with his appointment. It seems to suggest that, ultimately, maybe no human leader, no matter how good, how seemingly secure, how divinely sanctioned even, is truly permanent or provides absolute stability.
Not in the grand scheme of things.
Perhaps. Especially when viewed against divine purpose or judgment, as presented here. Everything that hung on him, all that glory, the family, the lesser vessels, it all comes down when the peg gives way. And that final line, the Lord has spoken, just seals it. This isn't a possibility. It's a declaration from the source's perspective.
Wow, okay. So that's quite a journey through Isaiah 22. We start in that valley of vision with the weird revelry in death. We see the city frantically building defenses but ignoring the spiritual call. Then that defiant eat and drink response, the harsh judgment. And finally, this focus on leaders. Shibna's fall, Eliakim's rise as the firm peg, only for that peg itself to be declared unstable in the end.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? Looking at this ancient text today, it forces you to ask some hard questions. When crisis hits, personal or collective, where do we instinctively put our trust? Are we all about the practical, the counting buildings and storing water, while maybe missing something deeper?
That call to look to the one who made it.
Right. What does that even mean for us when we're consumed by practical worries? And that ending with Eliakim, the supposedly firm peg. If even the best, most stable, seemingly divinely appointed human structures or leaders can ultimately give way. What does that say about where we find real, lasting security? What does it imply about human authority itself?
It really leaves you with that final thought hanging, doesn't it? If the source says even a peg driven firmly by divine appointment can be sheared off, causing everything resting on it to collapse, then what in our world can we truly ultimately consider unshakable? That's the challenge Isaiah 22 seems to leave us wrestling with.